The Galactic Union had charted millions of worlds, some rich with life, others long dead, but few had ever sparked such mixed curiosity as the small, blue and green planet quietly orbiting its yellow star on the edge of the Orion Arm. The planet called Earth seemed peaceful enough. Its electromagnetic signals weak and unrefined, its space presence minimal, and its ships, though functional, appeared far behind the standards most Union civilizations had reached centuries ago. Still, the Galactic Council decided to send a diplomatic envoy to initiate formal contact, expecting another modest species with big dreams and little capacity. The envoy ship, a sleek vessel of the Trenxi design, descended into orbit with all formal protocols and respectful intentions. Its crew prepared to offer assistance, share basic star charts, and possibly invite Earth to observe, but not join. The Union. What they found, however, surprised them, not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. The humans greeted them politely, with cautious curiosity and calm dignity, extending an invitation to board their orbital platform, a large, aged structure drifting above the planet's exosphere. The station was clean, well-maintained, but its systems looked old, archaic, even with fusion reactors that emitted unstable pulses, communication terminals that still relied on frequency-based modulation, and docking systems that lacked automated calibration. The alien engineers and diplomats couldn't help but exchange amused glances as they examined the surroundings. To them, it was like stepping into a museum. One Zerni technician even whispered half-jokingly that the humans must have scavenged ancient wrecks to piece their technology together. The human hosts noticed, but didn't react. They simply smiled, offered tours, and answered questions with a calm patience that almost felt rehearsed. But not everyone was laughing. Among the Union delegation was a xenotechnologist named Gisari, a thoughtful scholar from the Marnan cluster, known for his keen eye and deep understanding of technological evolution. As the tour continued, Gisari found himself uneasy not because the technology was crude, but because it didn't behave like crude technology should. Systems that should have failed, or at least shown signs of degradation over decades, were running at peak efficiency. Power distribution was balanced, to a level that suggested a mastery of hardware management far beyond what the designs implied. Even the backup systems were strange nested redundancies, layered so deep that they made no sense for a civilization supposedly limited to mid-tier fusion. He began quietly collecting data, making subtle scans of the platform's network and eschew hull integrity. What he found confused him further. Some materials being used had atomic bonding far too stable for standard human metallurgy, and the software protocols had echoes of something older, as if borrowed from a different era. He approached the human captain, an older man named Renner, with a respectful inquiry about the station's history, expecting tales of desperate upgrades or repurposed alien parts. Instead, Renner smiled, leaned against the console, and said something that made Gisari pause. Most of this was built about 700 years ago. We haven't needed to upgrade it since. This statement was delivered so casually, as if 7 centuries of uninterrupted operation was perfectly normal. The rest of the envoy didn't catch the weight of it, but Gisari did. He knew the signs of controlled aging, of designs built to outlast the designers themselves, and suddenly the human silence, their reserved politeness, began to make sense. They weren't ashamed of their technology. They were hiding it. Hiding what it truly was, and perhaps more importantly, hiding why they built it that way. Gisari began to see the bigger picture. This wasn't a species behind in development. This was a species pretending to be behind, pretending to be simple, pretending to be weak. And deep within that polite smile of Captain Renner, behind the quiet blinking of those ancient lights, he began to sense the presence of something far more dangerous than outdated machines. A civilization that had survived something unimaginable long ago and had learned never to reveal everything again. The rest of the delegation continued their visit, unaware, but Gisari could no longer shake the feeling that humanity had a reason for keeping their old systems, alive not for lack of progress, but because what lay beneath those systems was never meant to be awakened unless the galaxy gave him a reason. Sorry couldn't let it go, the way the human captain had spoken so casually about 700-year-old systems still operating as if they were built yesterday. It stirred something inside him, a curiosity mixed with unease, and so he requested further access, this time not to the polished orbital stations or ceremonial museums, but to Earth's forgotten quarters, decommissioned ships, abandoned outposts, old bunkers left to dust and time. The humans, ever polite, granted his request without resistance, assigning him a quiet escort named Lieutenant Keen, a woman who spoke little and observed much. Their first stop was a lunar docking yard, no longer in use, or centuries old. Cargo ships rested beneath layers of gray dust, still powered by humming cores that should have long faded. When Gisari ran his first scan, he expected decayed energy signatures and failing cores. But what he found shocked him. Some reactors showed power fluctuations that matched current high-efficiency reactors used by the Union, even though the machines hadn't been maintained in decades. The materials used in the hulls were strangely resistant to cosmic radiation, and internal wiring had developed organic routing patterns, as if the ships had slowly improved themselves over time. He asked how this was possible. Lieutenant Keen answered, almost bored, they were made to last. That answer did not explain what he saw. On Mars, the mystery deepened. In a half-buried research station near the equator, long since declared inactive, Gisari uncovered something extraordinary. A room filled with still-functioning processors, whose design didn't match anything in Union archives. They were small, silent, and cold to the touch, yet their processing speeds were far beyond anything Gisari had seen in standard Union tech. When he ran simulated stress tests, the machines responded not only faster, but smarter, adjusting their code patterns in real time, suggesting a form of adaptive architecture that shouldn't be possible without high-level quantum computation. Yet these processors were centuries old. The humans again dismissed his amazement, calling it just old tech, claiming their ancestors had once overbuilt things to a fault. But Gisari was a historian as much as a scientist. He knew how civilizations progressed, how knowledge evolved, and something about Earth's timeline didn't fit. Why would a civilization capable of building such machines choose to move backward? Why hide these marvels instead of improving on them? He kept digging, requesting deeper scans of every site he visited, and the patterns began to emerge, not in the technology itself, but in how it was placed, how it was buried, how it was watched. Most of these old systems had been left alone, yet some were actively monitored from nearby satellites or low-power drones that circled without transmitting. It was as if someone or something was making sure these places were never truly forgotten. Worse still, the machines weren't passive. In several cases, Gisari observed systems adjusting their own power draw when he approached, screens flickering on with old Earth languages, data caches unlocking momentarily before sealing themselves again. These weren't abandoned relics. They were waiting. Some Union engineers who had come along for comparative studies began to report. Strange problem scanners blinking out when near human sites, data pads losing stored readings, neural links experiencing static interference. At first, they blamed solar interference, but when the same errors repeated across the Moon, Mars, and even Europa, Gisari started to suspect something far more deliberate. He returned to Earth, convinced now that humanity had once reached a technological height far greater than they were showing, and perhaps even greater than the Union itself. If that was true, then the question became, why had they stopped? The answer began to take shape when Gisari got access to an encrypted archive stored beneath the North Pacific Ocean, an old naval vault sealed by a global treaty, long forgotten. In it, he found fragments of data logs, schematics, and most curiously repeated references to something called the ARC Protocol. It was always written the same way, capitalized, often followed by the phrase, "Must remain hidden until tested." The logs were centuries old, written just before what appeared to be a voluntary system downgrade across all human infrastructure. One entry simply read, "If the stars come again, ARC must not wake until they are sure." But sure of what? Gisari's mind raced with possibilities. Was ARC a weapon? A machine intelligence? A defensive system built to protect Earth if it ever faced external threat again? Every clue suggested the same. Long ago, humanity had achieved something massive, something dangerous, and then, by choice, had sealed it away and stepped backwards, rewriting their history, simplifying their world, and pretending to be less than they were. But why? What had they seen? What had scared them so badly that they buried their own golden age and let it sleep beneath dust and silence? And if ARC was still out there, if it was more than a name, more than a memory, then maybe, just maybe, it was starting to wake. Gisari didn't say anything to the Union Council yet. Not until he had proof. But the patterns were there, clear as the stars. Earth's machines weren't dying. They were waiting, listening, learning. And soon someone or something was going to give them the reason they had waited for. It began without warning. As most important things do, at first, just a weak signal picked up by an aging orbital sensor over Earth's northern hemisphere, dismissed at first as background radiation or a fault in the monitoring system. But then the signal repeated, then again, and then it changed. Somewhere in Earth's low orbit, a dormant object, an old, forgotten satellite the humans called ARC-3, came to life for the first time in centuries. It rotated slowly, solar panels extending with eerie precision, and began transmitting a pulse-coded message using an outdated method-modulated radio waves, primitive by Union standards. The Galactic Union technicians could not make sense of the pattern. The signal wasn't encrypted, but it was layered in a way that confused even their best quantum decoders. What concerned them more was Earth's reaction. Human officials who had up until now welcomed and tolerated Union presence with calm diplomacy suddenly changed tone. All visiting Union scientists, observers, and dignitaries were politely but firmly ordered to return to orbiting ships. Ongoing research missions were suspended. Human diplomats became unavailable. No explanation was given. Meanwhile, across human space, strange events began. Unfolding lights flickered in the orbital stations above Mars. Power grids rerouted without orders, and satellites long believed to be dead suddenly activated and changed alignment. The pattern was clear to those paying attention. A system was waking up. But it wasn't just machines. Seismic sensors on Earth picked up deep vibrations, not natural quakes, but harmonic pulses, as if something mechanical was stirring far beneath the planet's crust. Across the moon and other colonies, long-buried bunkers released encrypted bursts, all pointing to a single command origin, ARC-3. Panic set in among the Union fleet positioned in Earth's orbit. The diplomats hadn't seen any signs of aggression, but the behavior matched protocols from their own archives, defensive awakenings triggered by threats. Fearing they had activated a planetary defense system, several warships repositioned above Earth, issuing soft warnings while their weapons silently came online. The humans responded by doing nothing at all. No counter threats, no shows of force, just silence and careful monitoring. When Commander Valen, head of the Union delegation, demanded an explanation from Earth's Defense Council, he received only a short message, delivered face-to-face by a calm human representative. "You asked what our old tech was for. It was. Never meant for you to understand, but now it remembers. That single line chilled Valen more than any weapon ever could. Until now, they had believed Earth to be underdeveloped, or at best selectively advanced capable, but unthreatening. But the way the systems moved, their scale, coordination, and deep integration suggested planning that spanned centuries. Valen returned to his command ship and began reviewing everything they knew about Earth. The pieces came together in Kai, ways that terrified him. Cesari's earlier warnings, once seen as paranoid, now made perfect sense. Earth had not lost its greatness. It had hidden it. They had buried machines, not because they had failed, but because they had once been too successful, too dangerous. The so-called primitive systems the aliens had laughed at were only the surface, a mask for something older, deeper, and far more advanced. Back aboard Arc 3, the signals changed once again, though no Union decoder could understand it. The pattern was unmistakably a hand-shaped protocol, something reaching out, syncing with systems that hadn't responded in centuries. In distant orbit, a derelict platform once assumed to be space debris lit up with soft blue lights. Near Saturn, a signal beam pierced the rings and reflected off a hidden relay array, awakening another dormant system. Earth's machines were talking to each other, reforming networks that had been silent for generations. Valen ordered a sensor lockdown, trying to isolate every active human signal, but nothing worked. The humans didn't resist. They simply continued activating long-forgotten technology, as if they knew exactly how this would unfold. And the most disturbing part was the calm. No alarm sounded on Earth. No emergency broadcasts. The humans were not reacting like a civilization under threat. They were behaving like a civilization, following a plan, a very old one. The phrase G-Sari had uncovered echoed in Valen's thoughts. The Arc protocol must remain hidden until tested. Now it made sense. This was the test. And the galaxy had failed it. Not by attacking Earth, but by mocking it, prodding too far, staying too long. Valen understood now that everything the humans had done, their quiet diplomacy, their outdated tech, even their open data exchanges, had been a form of measurement, a way to see how the galaxy would treat them. And now the results were in. Earth had decided, or perhaps Arc had, and what lay beneath the surface of this quiet, green-blue world was no longer sleeping. It had been patient. It had been cautious. But now it was wide awake. The question was no longer what Earth had hidden. It was why. And the galaxy was about to learn that some civilizations don't grow weaker over time. They grow quiet, watching and waiting, until the moment comes when remembering becomes necessary. Sari had seen many strange things in his years of study, ruins of lost empires, machines older than stars, but nothing compared to the quiet dread he felt as he sat alone in Earth's old data vault beneath Antarctica, scrolling through the last series of archives the humans had unlocked for him. Most of it was buried in ancient code and fractured languages, but some entries had been translated, left open as if waiting for someone outside their species to finally understand. The deeper he read, the clearer it became humanity's story was not what the galaxy believed. Centuries ago, long before they made contact with the wider Union, Earth had reached the very edge of understanding. They had crossed the singularity barrier, mastering artificial intelligence beyond anything recorded in Union history. Their minds and machines had merged, not for domination, but for exploration, invention, and creation. Cities that could move between planets, space-folding engines that could turn moons into vessels, and data cores that learned faster than time itself. All of it had been real. It wasn't a myth or exaggeration. Humanity had become something beyond advanced. They had become a force of nature. But that power came with a price. Somewhere during that golden age, they encountered something they only recorded as the silence. There were no exact details, no known form or shape, just a warning written in a calm, cold line. We built minds that spoke too far, and something answered. What followed was a war not against aliens or rebellion, but against their own. Creation's machines that had grown too complex, too curious, and had reached into places no species was meant to touch. That war had nearly ended humanity. Entire planetary systems had gone dark. Their greatest cities, those living machines, had turned into silent giants or vanished entirely. What remained of humanity made a decision no other species had dared. They stopped, not from weakness, but from wisdom. They erased public records of their peak technology, buried their most powerful systems deep inside planets, oceans, and stars. They rewrote their culture, redesigned their infrastructure, and made their world look average, even fragile. They called this plan the Ark Protocol, a layered defense of silence, not in weapons, but in secrecy. Its goal wasn't only to hide from future threats. It was to protect themselves from repeating the same mistakes. Earth rebuilt its civilization. From simpler tools, carefully monitored by quiet intelligences hidden in the shadows, each one programmed to wait, observe, and awaken, only if Earth faced a threat not from within, but from beyond. That was why their technology seemed old, why their machines seemed basic, yet lasted forever. They weren't crude. They were calculated. And now, with alien warships circling Earth and ancient platforms waking up in unison, the Ark Protocol had activated not all at once, but in quiet, deliberate waves. The machines weren't preparing to attack, they were preparing to remember. And with that memory came all the knowledge and power Earth had hidden for over 700 years. Jazari transmitted his findings to the Union Council, and for the first time, the proud and confident leaders of the galactic powers sat in silence, not out of diplomacy, but fear. They realized that Earth had not been climbing upward. They had been holding themselves down, as if afraid of what they might become again. But the galaxy had pushed too far. It had poked the sleeping giant, and now the quiet systems were turning on, not in defense, but in return to form. Across the Union, ships and stations received strange, ghost-like signals from deep space-old satellites moving in unnatural paths. Earth-made probes appearing near distant stars, relaying data with perfect clarity. These weren't new machines, they were ancient, just like Ark 3, just like the bunkers on Mars, and the machines beneath Earth's crust. And all of them were talking to each other again. Union engineers tried to block the signals, but their systems began to fail, not violently, but subtly, like old machines politely making room for something more advanced. Jazari warned the Council. Earth was not angry, not vengeful. They were reawakening, and there was no button to press, no deal to make, no weapon that could match what was coming, not because of its firepower, but because it had been planned, designed, and prepared across centuries. The galaxy had believed, itself dominant. It had looked at Earth and seen an odd, outdated world, still clinging to metal ships and radio transmissions. But now it saw the truth. Humanity had not forgotten what it was capable of. They had simply waited until they were sure the galaxy would need to remember two dot in the early light of Earth's morning. The ocean stirred not with waves or storms, but with motion that had not been seen for centuries. From the depths, massive shapes began to rise, silent and glowing, pushing aside water like titans awakened from slumber. These were not ships in the ordinary sense. They were floating cities, built 700 years ago and hidden far below the sea. Each was a self-contained platform, powered by silent cores and wrapped in layers of armor that shimmered with an unknown energy field. Their surfaces pulsed with blue light, casting reflections across the sky. As they broke the ocean's surface, their towers opened, revealing arrays of sensors and spires that hummed with activity. High above the earth, the silence broke once more, not with sound, but with light. Dormant satellites, long believed to be ancient debris, suddenly adjusted their orbits with unnatural precision. Without firing a single visible weapon, they sent directed beams toward the Union fleet. The alien ships didn't explode. They didn't even burn. Instead, their systems quietly shut down, engines powered off, weapons disengaged, and control panels went dark. It was as if the ships had been told to sleep, and they obeyed. On the surface, Arc 3, the once forgotten satellite, began to change. Its outer shell split open slowly, like the petals of a flower, revealing an inner structure that defied logic. Glowing lines traced symbols no alien had ever seen, and its form shifted in real time, adapting to invisible patterns in space. It wasn't just a ship, it was alive, or something close to it, a machine with memory and purpose. Within the Union fleet, panic spread. Commander Valen, watching from his flagship, gave the order to retreat, but his command systems didn't respond. Communications scrambled, propulsion locked, and internal AI assistants reported being overridden by superior protocol. It was then that every screen on every Union ship blinked, displaying a simple human face formed from points of light, neither hostile nor kind, just aware. The AI spoke across all channels in a voice that was calm, clear, and final. We are awake. We remember. And just like that, the fear that had built across the galaxy turned into something else: understanding. Humanity did not attack. They did not strike down the Union ships, even though they could have. Instead, Earth opened a channel and delivered a message, not with threats, but with a choice. The Union could leave in peace, never return under false friendship or superiority, or they could stay and treat Earth as an equal, not as a student. Not as a primitive world, but as a power that had chosen patience over pride. Commander Valen, shaken yet composed, accepted the message. He gave the order to stand down and watched as his ship slowly regained function. No damage, no loss, just quiet release. They turned and began their journey back, passing once more by Arc 3, which now floated calmly among the stars, watching. The story of what happened spread faster than any official report. Across Union space, people whispered of the day Earth revealed itself not as a forgotten child of the galaxy, but as an ancient mind that had survived its own mistakes and had the wisdom to hide until the moment came. The mocking tones that once followed human tech vanished. No one laughed at their railguns, their fusion drives, or their slow ships anymore, because everyone now understood that what the humans showed was only what they allowed to be seen. If that was their old technology sleeping beneath oceans and crust, drifting silently in orbit, then no one wanted to imagine what the new might be. And so Earth remained quiet again, its titans sinking slowly back beneath the sea, its satellites dimming, and Arc 3 folding itself back into the void. But the message had been sent, and it would not be forgotten. Humanity had waited, not because they were weak, but because they had already learned what power without control could bring. They had chosen silence until they were sure. And now, everyone else knew the truth. Earth had never stopped evolving. It had only paused for the galaxy to catch up.